Hello friends, welcome to Coding Garden with CJ. Welcome to Morning Tea with CJ, the show where I browse the web and talk about the latest news. Welcome. If this is your first time joining Morning Tea, I do have a GitHub repo where I post the links and any code I write to every episode. You can check that out at github.com/codinggarden/morning-tea. And I'm running a little bit late. I apologize. Morning, Pedro. Welcome. Kaizen. Good luck with the clients. Amy, welcome. Rohit, hello. Welcome. Yes, it's gonna be a fun time. I will say this is gonna be a little bit shorter episode. If you've been tuning in, you might know that my capture card has been freezing. Looks like it's not freezing right now, but I'm gonna go to the store. I'm gonna get a new one. Tonight, we're gonna build a Reddit clone. I'm gonna be ready. I'm not gonna have to restart the stream or anything. But let's get right into it. So we'll start with r/JavaScript. And this first one, why not? A web window system, mobile friendly. Very interesting. Sounds like a way to like create modals inside of a web app or something like that. Let's see. I've been working on this web window system for a few months. It's hard to find one that works well on desktop and mobile browsers. This one seems to work pretty well now. The documentation and API still needs to be worked. I'm posting this as a dev version to see how it's received. Let's check it out. Oh, yeah, so this is what I was thinking. So, like, you can literally create windows inside of the browser, which is pretty nifty. And you can full screen them, and you can have windows inside of windows. Wow. Super interesting. Doop, doop. Can you resize? You can resize. Yeah, and like these windows are like stuck inside those other windows. That's pretty cool. I like it. Let's read the comments. Nice job. On a mobile, the controls should be just a tiny bit larger. That is very nifty. I think that's the right spelling for nifty. Let's try to see the mobile view. Let's do an iPhone 5. Maybe this isn't the best representation of, of what it would look like on mobile. I could probably spin up, you know, why not? Why not? Let's spin up an iOS simulator. Yeah, let's let that spin up and just go to the site, see what it looks like. Is there a GitHub repo? Looks like there's no link to one. Found a bug. If a window is shorter than the window it contains, you then scroll down to bring the bottom of the contained windows site into the taskbar. Whoa. Looks and works perfectly. Now it's super interesting. I could imagine, like, if you're building a web app that is maybe somewhat emulating a desktop app, or you need multiple windows. I mean, I've always been of the opinion that like modals on the web aren't really the best UI. You should really like be taking a user to another page, because like modals don't necessarily have state or like a URL. And if you wanted to get back to that specific orientation of windows or modals, how would you do that? I don't know. All right, let's try to go to the site in the simulator. Can I copy this? Edit. Paste. That didn't work. All right, let's type it in. az.ht/ui build/0.0.3/window.html. Okay, that's a little bit better. James, welcome to the stream. Hello, Professor Elements, welcome. Yeah, so this looks, I mean, it looks pretty usable. And you can full screen it inside of there. Yeah, it's usable. Right, John, welcome back. Amy is asking, where do you recommend someone goes to learn more about UI? Design for Hackers is a really good resource. Well, there's a book called Design for Hackers, but then they also have just tons and tons of blog posts about like design and UI and UX fundamentals. It's really good. Design for Hackers book. And then this one, yes, reverse engineering beauty. So they take kind of like the hacker's standpoint or perspective and look at like good designs and kind of reverse engineer why are those good designs, and then also talk about why they're good. And another one is Don't Make Me Think. This is like a classic in the user experience world. It just talks about what makes a good user experience and a good UI, because you don't want to make the user think. But yeah, Don't Make Me Think, Design for Hackers, and Design for Hackers has a lot of free online resources too. Cool. This is super interesting. I'll post a link to this. Like I said, I don't know if I'd use it in an app. Maybe if I had the right use case, I would use it. But right now, I can't really think of when I would use it. All right, moving right along. Let's click maybe 2 more. Like I said, this is going to be a shorter stream because I got to prepare for tonight. Got to go to the store. Got to do some yard work. Got things. I got lots of adulting to do. A quick practical use case for ES6 generators. Let's take a look. Building an infinitely repeating array. Ooh, okay. So if you're not familiar with generators, it's this weird star syntax on your function, and there's this idea of yield. And basically a generator is a function that can return something new every time it's called. So it can return multiple things. So basically what happens is the first time you call this repeated array function, you're going to get index 0 modded by the length, which is 0, which will be 0. So this will give you the first value in the array, and will increment index. So the next time you'll call this function, you're going to get 1 modded by 1. Oh, so you're just getting each index in the array. Okay. But let's look at the article. Preface: you've probably heard of ES6 generators. Perhaps you've learned the syntax, and you may be wondering what they're actually used for in real life. Well, I mean, an infinite array, is that useful in real life? Let's see what they have to say. Use case: I'm building an app in which my users can calculate a 3-week workout cycle, with a setting to work out between 3 and 7 days per week during the cycle. Each individual workout is based on one of the following 4 lifts: squat, bench, press, deadlift, and overhead press. And each successive workout must be based on the next lift in that order. Okay, so you have like a sequence of workouts. Let's see. You probably see where this is going. I need my code to say, give me the lift for the next workout, then the next, then the next. That's a perfect use case for a generator, because your generator function can actually have logic inside of it to decide what to yield next. So yeah, definitely. So without generators, you would map over the array and do the thing. This is like super weird syntax. You really have to parse this. So when you do a plus plus on a variable, you're actually accessing it first. So you get the current value, which is 0, and then you're modding the length. And right now the length of lifts would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 0 mod 4, what's that? Why even do the mod? Why can't you just keep track of the index? 0 mod 4 is 0. And then 1 mod 4 is 1. Why not just use the index? Okay, maybe he'll talk about it. But basically mapping over and choosing something from the array. But here, they're creating a generator that just yields each next thing in the array. Okay, I'm not gonna go too far into this, but it seems like a pretty gentle introduction. My only beef with this thing is weird syntax right there. I mean, you can figure out what it means, but it's a little weird to look at to begin with. If you've ever done React development, you might be familiar with the concept of thunks. There's also a concept called sagas, which work very similar to thunks, but they use generators instead. Let's take a quick stretch. Oh, Merchan is saying mod is for cycling, so going like back around the... Oh, okay, yeah, so it goes... that makes sense then. You go to the array, and then if it gets longer, you start back at the beginning of the array and keep going. Okay, makes sense. A question from Idris. Hi CJ, sorry to, I got a question which may not be related. That's okay. We're just hanging out. We're just drinking some tea. But I would appreciate if you could give some suggestions. Is it too late to start learning to code at the age of 35? Not at all. So I taught at a place called Galvanized for over 2.5 years. I taught full stack web development, and regularly we would have students that were 40, 50, 60, and no, I mean, if anything, you're more disciplined now than you were when you were younger. So if you decide to do something, you'll probably stick to it more than when you were younger. But there are tons of resources out there, and depending on the communities that you find, people are really open to just talking to anyone, no matter their age, no matter if they're new to things. Definitely, if you check out the link in the description, there's a link, I believe it is, there's a link to the Discord. There's an Ask Me Anything channel in there, and there's a lot of cool people in the Discord too, so you can ask for advice there too, and I'd be happy to continue the conversation there. Yeah, and Amy is mentioning she had a friend that drove taxis before, um, who was 45, and now he has a job coding. So it's definitely possible. Okay, one more link. I want to click this one. If you haven't heard of MobX, it is a state management library for React, but it's very similar to how Vue.js works. Let's take a look. MobX 5, the saga continues. TLDR, MobX 5 changelog and migration guide. Princess Proxy looked down at the crowd approaching the balcony of the throne room. Be careful, they are after your values, her father had warned her, but don't worry, you'll be ready for it. Okay, what am I reading? Um, is this a continuation of something? Okay, I think it's just announcing version 5 of MobX. And proxies. Okay, so this is super interesting. So Vue.js version, I think it's 2.6 next. Vue.js next proxies. So if you're familiar with Vue.js, there is a limitation of your data. If you want to add a new property to your data, you have to use vue.set or this $set, because Vue can't detect property addition. But I believe it's in Vue 2.6, they're going to introduce the use of proxies, and proxies let you detect property addition. And the reason I talk about this is because apparently MobX version 5 is now using proxies, so they can detect property addition. Vue 2 next. Yeah, so they're working on rewriting the reactivity system of Vue.js. It'll be only, so the reason it's on at next is because it's only going to be supported in browsers that support the proxy API, which is like more modern browsers. I guess I can't find the version. I think it's like 2.6 or something like that. But apparently this is a nice little fable that talks about the proxy. That's cool. And I think one thing that would be fun is to use MobX on the stream to build like a React app. If you look at the Vue.js docs, they talk about comparing it to, let's look at the guide, comparing it against other frameworks, and they talk about MobX. So MobX has become quite popular in the React community, and it actually uses a nearly identical reactivity system to Vue. To a limited extent, React and MobX can be thought of as a more verbose Vue. So it'd be fun to try to see, kind of like compare what it's like to build a MobX app versus like a Vue.js app. Yeah, and using the proxy API pretty much is a breaking change for any browser that doesn't support the proxy API. I think Code Kata's number 7, I solved a problem. It was the Harry Potter themed problem. That one I had to solve using a proxy. And if you check out my playlists, there's a JavaScript playlist. This one. And this video here, front end face off, I did this as a meetup talk about a year ago. And I built basically a very tiny MVC framework from scratch. And I used proxies to detect when the data changed so that I would know to update the view. So if you want to learn about proxies, check out those. Super interesting. I'll link to the MobX thingy. Oh, and to our earlier chat, Brooks mentions his grandfather taught himself programming in his 80s. I think that's awesome. Like, it's really never too late. And like I said, the older you get, the more responsible and dedicated you get. So it's a lot easier than when you're younger. The saga continues. All right, I will click this last one and then we'll move on to web dev. I was reading this last night. Is this vanilla.js site just a joke? So if you haven't seen this, there's this website, vanilla-js.com. And it introduces Vanilla.js, a fast, lightweight, cross-platform framework for building incredible, powerful JavaScript applications. The Vanilla.js team maintains every byte of code in the framework. Who's using Vanilla.js? Basically every top company. And choose exactly what you need. Do you need a prototype-based object system, or animations, or regular expressions, or closures, or an array library, or DOM traversal, or AJAX, or event system? Just check the boxes, and then you can download. And the final size of your download, including all of these features, will be 0 bytes, because all this stuff is built into the browser. So it's a joke. It's talking about how, like, Vanilla.js does have a lot of stuff built in. And if you download it, you essentially just get an empty file. And this site has been out there for a while. It's a pretty funny joke, but this person didn't know if it was a joke or not. Yeah, so the joke is that you check some boxes and generate a library for download, and then the file is empty because it is vanilla JavaScript. Cool. Yeah, good comment from Stavros. The feeling of immersion when you start getting better at coding and you're building something you like is amazing. That alone makes it worth it. And I think that's the thing, like, you can learn to code for code's sake, or like learn to code to get a job because it's like a high paying job. But at the same time, like, once you have the skill set to build things, you can solve problems that you've had before. Like, you now have the skill set to build a thing that you've want built before, or solve something that you wanted solved before. And that's extremely empowering. Question from Aditya: are you going to read more YDK.js? I think I will. I haven't recently. I did it once, but there was I did a was it bedtime JavaScript reading? Yes. I just streamed randomly at like midnight one night, and I had some like nice atmospheric music and like some reverb on my voice, and I was just reading You Don't Know JS by Kyle Simpson. I'll probably do that soon. Joe, welcome to the stream. Hello. Okay, let's link to this, and then we'll move on to r/webdev. Oh yeah, and if Merchan, if you're still out there, I figured out. So last night I did a Code Katas stream, and Merchan had suggested one of the katas to do, but when I submitted it on Code Wars, it kept timing out. But I figured it out. I'll just talk about it real quick, because why not? This one. This is a really tricky, very mathematical problem, but I wrote this version, and it times out. And the way I got it to not time out was to use less memory. So this array sequence is getting built up with more and more values, and so is scene, which is any value that you've calculated before. And then right below, I wrote the one that doesn't time out. And basically, every time we use X to calculate, we just shift it. Oh, sorry if you're wearing headphones. We just shift it off of the array and delete it out of the object. And that's all I had to do. And now that it was used, and instead of returning sequence at n, you just return sequence at 0, because that's going to be the actual value. And this ran in about 7 seconds. So using less memory apparently made it not time out. So that's interesting. And you can check out last night's Code Katas if you're interested in that. All right, let's move on to r/webdev. Forbes needs to process your request if you decide not to allow data collection. So this probably has to do with the GRDP? GDRP? The new laws enacted in the EU about data privacy. Preference submission processing. We are processing your request to opt in or out of receiving targeted ads. Your web activity will no longer be used for targeted advertising by the company. This may take up to a few minutes to process. Interesting. After about 2 minutes of processing, you're greeted with a small display that basically asks you to change your preference setting to allow for data collection. So what's your favorite GDPR website novelty? Was just on this guy and asked if we can use it for GDPR. It blocks cookies by deleting them from your browser after they've been sent back from the tracking servers on every page load. What? So, the server sets a cookie, and then you just delete it, but they're still setting a cookie? I don't know. Between this and their god-awful welcome quote of the day gigantic ad page, there is a reason I never use Forbes. I guess I don't read them much unless I find a link from Reddit or something like that. I don't know, it's super interesting. A couple weeks back, I talked a bit about, GDPR, and like all the different sites and how they've been implementing it. And you probably have been getting lots of emails from different companies about like they're updating their privacy policy and stuff like that. A good article to help you build your first Electron app. Let's check it out. So 2 Newbie Tuesdays ago, me and Tony built a desktop clipboard manager with Electron. So let's see what they're doing. Multi-threading, SQLite, native modules, common pain points. As a framework for developing desktop applications, Electron has a lot to offer. It grants full access to Node's API and ecosphere. It deploys on all major operating systems with a single code base. And with its web-based architecture, you can use the latest features of CSS to create advanced UIs. Cool. So this tutorial talks about what is Electron and how does it work. Multi-threading, using local databases like SQLite, native modules, gotchas, and packaging and application. Very cool. I won't go through this, but if you're interested in Electron, definitely check this out. And definitely check out the Newbie Tuesdays from like 2 weeks ago. I believe all the Newbie Tuesdays streams are in a playlist on my channel, so you can check that out. Excuse me. Allergies are killing me today. Okay. Ooh, okay, we're not going to watch this, but I'll definitely watch this later. Ryan Dahl, creator of Node.js. 10 things I regret about Node.js. And this was from JSConf Europe. Oh, sorry about that. Let's see if there's any links to slides or anything. Let's just see what this is.
Dart. Do you guys know Dart? Yeah.
Somebody just linked to that time. Okay, I definitely have to check this out later. Let's look at the comments real quick, but looks super interesting. Let's see the comments. I was there and found that the tone of delivery was lacking respect for the developers maintaining what he left behind. The same message could have been delivered in a much more productive and collaborative way and not left such a bad taste in our mouths. Dunno, seems cool and all, but most people were discussing how he was being kind of an ass. Okay, I could see that. He left this project quite long ago. I followed him a lot back then. It's interesting to hear him say that NPM and Node modules are regrets, since lots of complaints about Go packaging from people new to Go ask for something similar. Just 10, yeah. It'd be interesting to hear what he said about like Node modules. Like, I mean, that's one of the things about working with Node and installing dependencies is like every single directory that is a Node project has its own copy of those Node modules. If you're using something like Yarn, I believe it, I don't know for sure, but I think it might actually do like caching and symlinks, but Node modules takes up a lot of space on your machine. I once did a scan of my drive to remove all Node modules folders, and this was probably after like a year of writing like Node.js apps. Found 7 gigs of Node modules. So I just deleted all of them, and anytime I needed to go into a new project, I would just npm install again. But that is an interesting thing about Node. Let's take a quick stretch. Visual Studio Code May 2018 has been released. Super interesting. We are in June, but they're releasing the May version. Maybe they released it at the end of May. I'm curious, is my VS Code the latest? Code about visual code 1.24.0, and that's the latest version. So it automatically updated. Cool. Question from Merchan. This is off topic, but have you ever used a font with ligatures? I recently started using Fira Code in VS Code, and it introduces new characters for symbols like lambda arrow, not equal, and HTML comments. I have not, but I have seen them. Fira Code might have been the one that I've seen before, and I'll just pull it up because it's cool to show people if they haven't seen it before. But basically, a ligature is like when you're typing, if it detects two characters next to each other, it'll turn them two specific characters. It'll turn them into a single character. So like when you write not equal in your editor, it actually converts it into, well, this is, I guess, not single equals. It converts it to that. If you do not triple equals, it converts it to that. If you do like arrow functions like equal, greater than, it'll convert it into that. So it has all these different things built into, yeah, I guess you can see it in action here. All these different things built in that just like make it a little bit more concise to make that thing more recognizable. I personally haven't used one. I'm not against trying one out. Just haven't really thought to use one. I think there's some other fonts out there that have ligatures in them too. I'll throw that in extras. That's interesting stuff. Cool. Let's see what's new in Visual Studio Code. And apparently my Visual Studio Code updated behind the scenes, so that's cool. Unused variable detection. Okay, I guess you already got that if you're using like ESLint or something like that. Move to new file refactoring. Easily pull classes and functions into their own files. Ho ho. Whoa, okay. I normally write code on the stream. I think I'm going to test out these new features. Like I'm going to click maybe 2 or 3 more links, and then I'm going to test out these features in VS Code, because that sounds pretty cool. All right. One more link in here, and then we'll go to r/programming, and then we will take a look at VS Code. Chrome will have an install button in the address bar for progressive web apps. So I was reading an article this morning on progressive web apps and how really just like the web as a distribution platform, and how slowly, like 2-3 years ago, people definitely doubted the ability of web apps to be like a distribution app platform, and went mostly for native apps, like native Android apps, native iOS apps. But browsers are constantly getting new features that you're able to access with progressive web apps and progressive web app features. And so it's more and more possible to create like native like experiences in the browser. And this apparently allows you to add a progressive web app to the browser, which should almost be like an app install. If the site meets the add to home screen criteria, Chrome will show the mini info bar, add to home screen. Then if the user clicks on the mini info bar, you call prompt on the before install prompt, Chrome will show a modal add to home screen dialog. So you could build out a progressive web app. It can tap into these functions, prompt or before install prompt, and you can install yourself basically into that user's browser. And I believe Android supports this as well. So it's going to be more and more possible to basically visit a website in your Android browser and then install it almost like an app on your phone. I don't know, you can see my phone. I was just gesturing. Cool. And you can actually like trigger the dialogue. That's pretty cool. I'll link to it. What was the link here? Chrome will have an install button in the address bar for progressive web apps. Actually, that's not true. It's not in the address bar. It's a dialogue. Okay, regardless. Link that. All right, let's click like 1 or 2 links on r/programming, and let's check out the new features in VS Code. A step-by-step guide on how to write your own simple OS from scratch using C and the ARM assembler. That's pretty interesting. Raspberry Pi OS. Ooh, this will be fun. I have like 4 Raspberry Pis laying around the house. Got little, oh, can't see that, Arduinos laying around. This is a secret project that I will reveal very soon. That's on my desk here. But yeah, I love messing around with hardware. There's if you've heard of it, there's a project called Linux from Scratch, and it's basically just like an online book that walks you through building an operating system from scratch. So I'm assuming this does something very similar and would be very cool to do. Kernel initialization, processor initialization, interrupt handling, process scheduler, user process, and system calls. And they're still working on the other lessons. That's super interesting. Learn operating system development using the Linux kernel and the Raspberry Pi. Projects like that are like really just for learning. Typically, you would never like build your own operating system for people to use. It's really about learning about the internals of an operating system and how it works. And once you've done that, it's a bit easier to understand things if you're like working at a lower level. All right, one more link. Yeah, let's read this one because it is big news. I guess I didn't really see any links on it, but Microsoft acquired GitHub for $7.5 billion. And a lot of developers kind of freaking out about that, like jumping ship from GitHub to GitLab and basically saying like, oh no, it's the end of the world. Microsoft is going to close source everything. But if you've been paying attention, Microsoft has been doing a lot of open source things the past 6 or so years, 5-6 years. They open sourced the .NET Core. They've just been very open and much more open than they had in the past. So I don't know. I'm optimistic, and also like all of my stuff's open source anyway. Like, what are they gonna do? Like, they can't do anything. Like, my code on GitHub is open source. Maybe they'll charge money, but then I'll do like a self-host or move to GitLab. I don't know. I'm not worried. Steve Ballmer spent years hating on open source software. Satya Nadella recognized that the service has become indispensable to programmers. Oh, GitHub, we knew ye pretty well. Actually, over the past decade. At least programmers did. I'm not going to read this whole article, but it is like a look at, okay, like when Steve Ballmer was running the company, what was he doing versus what Satya Nadella has been doing over the past few years in the open source community and in terms of like open source things. So check that out. That'll be a good read. And let's check out the new features in VS Code. That will be very fun. And I mean, I didn't read the article, but the title here might lead to what it's talking about. So GitHub is Microsoft's $7.5 billion undo button. Now, while a lot of developers might not be taking it very well right now, it could be that it's almost like a peace offering. Like, okay, we now own this open source method of people collaborating and things like that, and they'll keep it good and get open source people on their side. Maybe. I don't know. All right, let's check out the new features in VS Code, and then I'm going to call it. It's a shorter stream, like I said. I've got adulting to do, so let's check it out. All right, unused variable detection. Unused variables, parameters, and importance are now grayed out in JavaScript and TypeScript. Oh, that's okay. I was wondering why my variables were gray. That makes sense. So let's create a new file, just like test.js, apple equals granny. And look at that. It's gray because it's unused. I also have ESLint installed, so I get an error that it's not assigned a value but never used, but the fact that it's gray is a new feature. That's super interesting. And if we log it, well, it's still gray. Hey. I guess it's talking about like potentially import statements. Let's say we create an apples array. And then we say apples.push apple. Okay, I don't know. It's still gray. Oh, this is super interesting too. You can right click it and say delete all unused. I don't have that option. Delete all unused declarations. Is that only in TypeScript? Oh well. Maybe this next one will work. Let's check it out. Move to new file refactoring. A new move to a new file refactoring for JavaScript lets you quickly move classes functions to their own file. Okay, so let's say in this file I have a class called animal, and it has a constructor that takes in a name and sets this.name to name. Okay, and then let's say I have another class called dog, and it extends animal and nothing beyond that. If I right click this, I'm not getting these options. Maybe I have to do something. Oh, maybe I have to enable the setting. Let's see. You can disable the setting by setting JavaScript show unused to false and TypeScript show unused to false. Let's make sure that this is true. Yeah, so right now show unused is true. Move file to new refactoring. I don't see the option though. I guess these are TypeScript files. That could be it. I think if I just name this .ts, I might get the features. Okay. There we go. Refactor. Wait, no. I want to extract it to its own file. This is not working out well. Move to a new file. Maybe because it's not exported? Let's see. Go to definition, peak definition, find all references, rename symbol, change all occurrences, format document. Well, do I need I might need a TS config. Am I sure I'm on the latest version? That's a good call. I think I am though. Version 1.24. I checked a minute ago. About Visual Studio Code. It is version 1.2.4.0. Let's see if there's a minor release. Hey guys, I'm attempting to demonstrate the new features in VS Code, but I'm failing because they're not showing up for me. I do have the latest version though. Version 1.24. Oh my goodness. Font zoom commands. This is one of the biggest reasons I didn't switch to VS Code, because it didn't have that built in by default. By default, when you zoom in, it enhances the whole UI. I had to make a custom shortcut that would increase the font size with keyboard shortcuts, because that's typically what I want to do. I don't want to increase the font size of this over here. So that's cool. They included that now by default. However, I want to at least demonstrate one of these new features. VS Code can now automatically update import paths when a JavaScript or TypeScript file is moved. Okay, let's try this. Let's create a new file called dog.typescript, and we're going to put this in there. And in here, we will import animal from animal. And let's rename this to be animal. Yeah, it could be, Meritchan is mentioning maybe an extension is interfering or causing problems. I could have an extension installed that is blocking these new features, or not blocking them, but enabling something else which disables that. Let's try this though. We could probably do an export default. So export default class animal. The property name does not exist on type animal. Oh, because we're using TypeScript. So name is a string. Is that how that works? Or string name. How does TypeScript work? What is this complaining about? Let's just look up TypeScript syntax real quick. TypeScript lang. Quick start. Nope. Documentation. 5 minutes. Handbook. Basic types. Classes. Greeting : type. Okay, there we go. Okay, cool. So I've got an animal, exports class animal. I'm importing that in and extending it, not doing much more than that. But this feature says I can right click animal and say move to new file. I don't see it. What if I do this? Move to, nope. What if I rename this? Because it also demoed that if you rename a file, it will automatically detect that and ask you to update your imports. You know what? Maybe I need a TS config though. I shouldn't, right? It should just work. Let's see. TypeScript in 5 minutes. Okay, that's great. Yeah, like they don't even have a TS config here for like the basic introduction. Okay. Let's try it. I'm going to rename this to be memo.typescript. Hey! Automatically update imports for moved file. Yes, please. Cool. And now if we look at dog.ts, it's coming from the mammal file. All right. Let's rename this to mammal. I don't know if that would... We can, I think this has been in VS Code for a while, but like rename symbol, it will find all references and rename it inside of the document. Okay, we got at least one new feature to work. That's pretty cool. Let's see if we can get at least one more to work. IntelliSense for predefined variables, variable suggestions in debug, and task configuration files. Let's check that out. Oh. We now suggest predefined variables as completions inside string values for both task.json and launch.json configuration files. So I believe, let's do a new one. Hello world. This will create a launch configuration. What node? Yes. Okay. So if you didn't know this about VS Code, you can debug your JavaScript code by creating a launch file. So we're gonna do. Let's like zoom out so we can see all this. Node.js launch program. And I guess I already had that, but let's not need that one. But what this new feature is saying is like inside of program, it should give me some autocomplete. Wait. Or not. And really I want this to be test.js. Let's do this. And then right here, we'll do a debugger. Launch the program. Okay, so it stopped there. This worked, but I was not able to demonstrate that autocomplete is working. But this is a cool feature of VS Code if you didn't know existed. Now you can actually step through your code and like see your variables. Cool. Or if we did like const message equals hello world. And then if we log the message, you can actually see that. But if we debug this, like on this line, message is currently undefined because of hoisting. And then here it's still undefined. After that line of code runs, now message has the value hello world. So you actually like see your local variables and scope and closures. You'll see all that in here too. And you can hover over variables to see what their current value are. So that's cool. But this is not working. Variable substitution for keys. Previously, we would substitute predefined variables only for values. With this release, variables are now substituted in keys as well. Oh, so apparently you can use variables inside of here. I want this to work. Okay. Program. Workspace. Is that what it was before? Oh, sorry. Workspace folder. No, it's not working. I'll have to debug some things. Maybe I can have it working tonight. This one worked though. When we moved a file, that thing popped up, and that was pretty nice. Let's actually. I'm curious. Does it work for JavaScript and not TypeScript files? So let's rename this to .js, and then rename this .js. And so now this file is referencing mammal, and if we rename this to be animal, it still detects it when it's JavaScript. So that's a good thing. And then over here, it updates it to animal, and we can rename the symbol here too. Very cool. All right, this was probably the lamest demonstration of VS Code new features you've ever seen before, but I appreciate you watching and hanging in there. I'll try to figure these things out for tonight. I am doing a live stream tonight on building a full stack Reddit clone, but that is all the time I have for today, for right now. But if you check out my channel, you can set an alert for this evening, 8:20 p.m. Mountain Time. I'm going to be building a full stack Reddit clone with Firebase Firestore, Vue.js, and Vuex. It's going to be a fun time. And also, I think I'm going to use Bulma for styling. Yeah, thanks for watching. Amy, you are very welcome for myself streaming. Thanks for tuning in. That's pretty much it. As I mentioned earlier, if you were tuning in, there is a link to the Discord in the description below. So if you want to join that and chat, feel free to. And that's pretty much we all have all the words. Let me take a sip of tea. That's pretty much all the time we have for today. I'm going to push these links up so you can take a look at them. They're on GitHub. I'll throw this link in the description too. And that's all. Have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night, wherever you are in the world. And hopefully, I'll see you in 9 hours. See you in 9 hours. Oh, before I go, fish cam. That's Dash. Later, Pedro. Okay, I'm really going now. See ya.